Hello, design lovers. There's a classic saying in the construction world, measure twice, cut once. Today, on the Spatialist Design Show, we're going to apply those same sound principles to design decisions as we weigh the pros and cons of some of the more high-maintenance choices you might encounter. Now, I want you to keep in mind that these choices we're discussing today aren't necessarily poor ones, especially if you absolutely adore them. However, they undeniably require more upkeep than more traditional design decisions. Let's dive into some common design elements that, while stylish, can demand a bit more of your time and effort. First on our list are glass pendants. Glass pendants always make a statement, and I particularly like using them for kitchens with lower ceilings. If you have an 8-foot ceiling, for instance, I think they are excellent because they don't visually crowd the ceiling. However, they definitely fall under the category of high maintenance. Here's why. The amount of dust you can't imagine quickly accumulates in these fixtures. Bugs also make their way in there, and the glass very rapidly appears foggy. Most of these are genuinely a pain to clean on any sort of recurring basis. So if you're someone with lower ceilings and you don't want to feel like the walls are caving in when you install pendants in the kitchen, the best suggestion I have for you is a pendant light that looks something like this, where it's maintenance-free. You don't have to clean any glass, and you still achieve a similar aesthetic goal. Following a similar theme to glass pendants, our next point concerns glass coffee tables, side tables, and dining tables. Unfortunately, for those of us who love the style of glass coffee tables or side tables, these are very high-maintenance design decisions. If you've ever owned one, you know that keeping them fingerprint or smudge-free is practically a full-time job, especially if you have children or pets. I always advise approaching this design decision with caution and carefully considering the application before you commit. If you really want to put a glass top table in your formal living room, a room that you don't use very often and where kids or pets might not frequent, that might be something you can pull off. Now, if you're watching this and contemplating a glass top dining table, I'd absolutely approach that with caution, even if you don't have kids or pets. These are just incredibly difficult to keep looking clean and streak-free. Let's talk about white farmhouse sinks. White farmhouse sinks continue to be popular, and I personally love them. But sadly, speaking from experience, they are a very high-maintenance design decision. They show dirt, grime, and grease very easily. They also scratch really easily. Of course, there are products you can use, like Barkeeper's Friend, to clean your sink and get rid of scratches. And most of those do typically restore the sink to its former glory. You're not going to really see those scratches. However, they come back very quickly. So what I do recommend, especially if you are just set on a white farmhouse sink and you're okay with the maintenance, you're okay with having to clean it 1, 2, maybe 3 times a week to keep it in that pristine white condition, is to get a grate for the bottom of your sink. This helps with scratches, and weirdly, this also camouflages how dirty the sink is. It's like it distracts your eye. I'm always a little shocked when I take that grate off to clean the sink at how dirty my sink actually is. But that's a little tip if you are just dead set on this high-maintenance design decision. Another high-maintenance design choice, particularly in the kitchen, is insufficient upper cabinets, or completely foregoing upper cabinets altogether. While I appreciate the thought process here, perhaps aiming for a more open or minimalist look, this idea, taken too far, falls a little flat the moment you realize you don't have enough storage in your lower cabinets for things you'd normally store in uppers. We're talking about items like glasses, coffee mugs, wine and cocktail glasses. Some people even store their medicine in their upper cabinets, or their extensive Yeti or Stanley collections. The list goes on. Now, if you are set on removing most of your upper cabinetry, adding in mostly drawers over doors with your lower cabinets is typically the storage solution to maximize storage in your kitchen. I've found things like plates and bowls. I love storing those in drawers. However, it has been my experience that finding a spot for everything else that I just mentioned, your cups, your wine glasses, all of that, gets pretty tricky when you don't have a lot of upper cabinets. And they do quickly take up a lot of space. Next up, let's discuss open shelving in kitchens, something I hinted we would be talking about. People either love this idea or they hate it. Now, I can get behind open shelving because 1, I love a good shelf display, and 2, it does help smaller kitchens look larger because you are eliminating a lot of that bulk from the upper cabinetry when you swap those with open shelves. However, this is a high-maintenance design decision, and here's why. Grease is going to quickly collect in your kitchen, as is dust, so anything that lives on these open shelves is really prone to being dirty fairly often. Now, if you're going to stack items like plates or cups, this is great, because you're going to be cleaning those fairly regularly. However, if you are going to use the open shelves mostly for decor, you will find that you need to clean those fairly often. Another thing to think about, because a lot of people say, well, I'll just simply replace my upper cabinets with some open shelving. A lot of the items that are typically reserved for cabinets are not aesthetically pleasing enough for most people to store on open shelving, and it quickly looks cluttered. You feel like you have to have a curated mug and glass collection, and it's just something that's just a little hard to pull off. If you've ever seen these gorgeous photos of kitchens with ample open shelving, you'll notice that the items on the shelf are perfectly organised and arranged, nothing like what most of the inside of everyone's cabinets look like. So if you're someone that is okay with curating your shelves and keeping them that way, I say go for this. However, if this sounds a little too unrealistic for you, you might want to reconsider. Moving on, let's discuss open concept floor plans. The open concept movement has certainly ebbed and flowed in popularity for decades. People either love this idea, are huge proponents of it, or they cannot stand the thought of it. The idea of just having the kitchen open up to one living space so that you can easily entertain is really long gone, and now it's like when you walk in the front door, you have a full view of everything. So if you are someone that doesn't mind seeing a mess, you don't want cozier spaces, and you don't need privacy for work purposes, this might be something that you should consider. However, if you don't enjoy eating with friends or family while you have the view of the kitchen, where you just made a huge mess, or you don't like that feeling of constantly feeling like you must pick up everything so that your home doesn't look chaotic, a fully open concept space might not be for you. In my opinion, the best of both worlds is to have an open concept kitchen that opens up to one living or entertaining space, and then have more defined spaces where you can host a meal, read a book, or just do some work with some peace and quiet. Next, and this is a big one for many, there's no denying it, black plumbing fixtures are incredibly chic and very trendy right now, adding a bold, modern touch to kitchens and bathrooms. I absolutely understand the appeal. However, these beauties are high maintenance, especially if you live in an area with hard water. Those white chalky mineral deposits, the soap scum, and even simple water spots become glaringly obvious against that dark matte finish. It's the contrast that really makes them stand out. While other finishers might camouflage these a bit, on black, they're front and center. This means you'll likely find yourself wiping them down much more frequently to keep them looking their best. Plus, you have to be careful with cleaning products, as harsh chemicals can sometimes damage or dull that beautiful matte surface over time. So, if you love the dramatic look and are prepared for diligent, regular cleaning, then go for it. But it's definitely something to be aware of before you commit. Hands down, one of the biggest high-maintenance design decisions you can make is installing white grout in a shower. White grout will look good the day it's installed, and that's about it. Grout is very, very hard to keep clean. So, if you are going to commit, if you really, really want to commit to white grout, do yourself a favour and spring for the epoxy grout. It is considerably more expensive than traditional grout. However, you will be so frustrated with how dirty your grout looks. Now, if you don't want to spring for epoxy grout, the best advice I could give you is to pick a grout colour that resembles the colour of sand. This way, when dirt and grime inevitably cling onto the ground, it won't really bug you because it will just blend right in. Of course, the trend right now with wall colour is to go white and paint every single room in your house stark white. I get this. This was the natural reaction of those of us that were really over those cool blue-grey walls. All white walls are a little bit of a high-maintenance design decision because you do have to work extra hard to make them feel cosy. Now, if you're someone that is committed to your white walls, I think that's okay, but do know this. They look best when the white is repeated in the room's fixed elements or decor. Also, with a lot of trim work, white is really beautiful if you've got a large artwork collection. White really helps to have them pop, or if you're someone that's going to spend a lot on bringing in fabrics and texture to your space. You must work just a little bit harder to keep those white walls from falling flat and looking too sterile. But if you're committed to those warm white walls, I know you can do it. The finish of matte or flat paint sheen can certainly be beautiful, and it does hide a lot of imperfections when compared to an eggshell or a satin finish. However, if you have kids, if you have messy pets, you will find that this paint is almost impossible to clean, and you will be left feeling like you need to repaint your walls. So consider the application when you are thinking about using a matte finish. I tend to recommend eggshell finish for most high traffic areas, solely for the reason that it is easier to clean. However, if you want to use a matte finish in a library, a study, an office, a place where people don't frequent as much, I say go for it. Just think about how much traffic is accumulating in the space where you want to put matte paint before you commit. Regarding dark floors, I get it. We want what we want, and some of us want those dark hardwood floors. Now, personally, I am team medium brown hardwood all the way, but I have seen gorgeous homes with dark brown floors. Here's the kicker though. They are high maintenance. You will be shocked at the amount of dust present on these floors. Now, it's not like these dark hardwoods attract more dust than lighter or medium-toned hardwoods. It's just very, very visible, as are scratches. So if you're okay with these two issues, go ahead and install those dark hardwood floors. If you're buying white, off-white, or even super pale neutral coloured furniture, one of the best things you can do is to take a picture of it the day that you install it, because it will never look that good again. But in all seriousness, unless you plan to put slip covers on this furniture, or not allow anyone to sit on this furniture, even if you go with high-end stain-resistant fabric, you just have to be okay with the fact that it is going to show wear and tear much faster than fabric that is a little bit darker and hides stains a little bit better. And while we're on the subject of fabric, a choice that often doesn't age well is fabric on bar stools or dining chairs. Please, please, please consider darker fabric options for these applications. Now, any chair that you're going to sit in all the time, even if it's high-end fabric, it does pill quicker over time. So, something to consider. I love the look of a fabric dining chair. However, I just don't tend to install it too frequently because it is extremely high maintenance, and it never looks as good as it does the day you install it. Alright, that was a whirlwind tour of some design choices that, while undeniably stylish, do come with a bit more, shall we say, commitment in the maintenance department. I hope weighing these pros and cons helps you make informed decisions for your own beautiful spaces. Which of these high-maintenance beauties are you still tempted by? Or which ones have you learned to lovingly avoid? Now, if you found these insights helpful, and I truly hope you did, please show some love and give this video a big thumbs up. And if you're eager for more design fundamentals, practical tips, and a bit of fun along the way, then hit that subscribe button right now. And don't forget to tap the little notification bell so you're the first to know when a new episode drops. We'd be thrilled to have you as part of our growing Spatialist family, where we navigate the wonderful world of design together. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Which high-maintenance design choice from today's list surprised you the most? Or do you have one you'd add? As always, I'm Sophie from the Spatialist Design Show. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. Remember, creating a home you love is a journey, not a destination. So embrace the process, choose wisely, and design a space that truly reflects you. Until next time, happy designing.